Welcome again to our course on biodesign, strategies for innovation and design on bioengineering. Today we're going to take a brief look on licensing and alternate pathways. So let's start. So for today's class, I want you to recognize that not every medical technology invention and company must or should be developed into a standalone business. There are other options that you can pursue, and we're going to revise them today. I want you to understand what is licensing and other alternative development pathways for medical device inventions, such as technology transfer or co-developments. Also, I want you to recognize the key factors to execute all these transactions and to know some of the key aspects of all these partnerings, licensings, sales and acquisitions deals that you may think are very obscure, but at the very end of the day are not. So what is a license? Well, a license licensing is to grant a license to someone to permit the use of that thing or for an activity to take place. In this sense, a license is given when someone has a patent or even a patent application, and licensing agreements can be made for a university or research institute or even yourself to license your intellectual property, whatever it is, to someone else on some economical terms. Now that we know what a license is, we can think about the types of licensing agreements that there are. In this sense, there are three main variables that are going to define what your licensing agreement is going to look like. And by the combination of all these three different variables, you can have a lot of different licensing terms and deals. In these terms, the three variables are: first, field of use; second, territory, geographic distribution of the rights; and third, exclusivity of the rights. If we think about the field of use of a license, it could be either for all applications and disease areas, or it could be limited to a certain application or disease. This is important to consider for two factors. One, if the inventor wants to use that same license for another application that it's not in the scope of development of the company that it's actually getting the license, he might push for a limited application and disease area use. Nonetheless, it could be also beneficial for some companies because the more limited the field of use of a license is, the cheaper the license is probably going to be. Nonetheless, if you include all the applications and disease areas on your license, that will mean that you are providing a more valuable license for your customer. After that, we can think about territory or geographic distribution of the rights. As you know, there are different national phases and international patent applications, and it's important to define where, if there is any condition to that, you want to provide those licensing rights. In these terms, distribution of rights could be either worldwide or all-inclusive, or it could be conditioned to some geographic area or nation. And finally, you can work a little bit with the exclusivity rights on any licensing agreement. In all licensing agreements can be either exclusive or non-exclusive, or it could be a sole license. In these terms, an exclusive license for a whole patent or patent portfolio is of course more costly but more valuable than having a non-exclusive or a sole license, which in the terms of a non-exclusive license means that any other company competitor to your licensee is can enter into an agreement just like yours with you again. In terms of a sole license, it includes the use of what the patent protects for a certain period of time or a number of times, and it's of course of the least value but also of the least cost. In pursuing a deal that it's related to some technological transfer, licensing agreement, or co-development, it's very important to move in this pathway. First, try to do a preliminary contact with whoever your licensee must be. After that, try to convince them with a presentation or any other information exchange. And after that, start with a letter of intent. A letter of intent is a non-binding agreement for both companies or the inventor and a company to actually try to pursue some sort of deal eventually. Nonetheless, it's again non-binding, and it only gives a precedent that both parties want to collaborate. It is important for you to set the stage for a due diligence and eventually for a deal to be executed. After having a letter of intent signed by both parties, you can start pursuing a due diligence. Of course, a due diligence, as we have explored in previous presentation, can be either very superficially or very internally into the data, and so you would want to pursue a non-disclosure agreement also after the letter of intent or within the letter of intent as a way to protect your intellectual property. After the due diligence, negotiations might start with a term sheet, which is a single piece of paper that lays out in broad terms what both parties want and what are the rules of the game. But also you can be proactive or search for offices of technology transfer to access to things called ready to sign agreements. These agreements are going to be ways or documents to easily pursue deals without worrying too much about the legal terms and the nuances of all these negotiations and legal jargon. After having negotiations and discussing the viable term sheets and maybe revising some ready-to-sign agreements, you can definitely try to close the deal. Having a definitive contract that can be of any of these 4 different schemes. Either could be a licensing deal or a technology transfer deal in which all the rights forever are transferred to the other part, or either a CoDevelopment in which both parties agree to put something on the table that is valuable to further pursue the development of the technology, and maybe it's licensing or transfer, or even an option agreement. Many co-development agreements finish with an option agreement in which the company that it's looking to get the IP license or transfer to them wants to co-develop first to know as a due diligence process if the technology actually works and if it's valuable. And after that, if everything goes according to plan, they can execute what it's called an option to actually buy the technology or license it from the inventor. And with this, what could be the basic steps also on performing or trying to lay out some licensing or other pathway if you don't want to have a standalone business with your technology? Well, first, try to determine whether or not you want to pursue this type of development pathway. If you don't have time to pursue your technology right now because of personal matters, but you do know that you eventually want to do a standalone business, then maybe a licensing or a technology transfer agreement may not be an option for you. Nonetheless, if you know that you only wanted to do innovation for a few moments, and you wanted to pursue this bio design goal, not just for a very small part of your life, then it might be a good option for you. After determining whether this is or not an option for you, then try to assess the best timing for the transaction. Do you want it to be in 2 months, in 6 months, in 3 years? And it's all going to depend on the value that you want to build in your technology before transferring it. The more value there is already in your technology, of course, the better terms for you in any licensing or transfer or co-development agreement. After that, identify and evaluate some targets for having these deals. It may be some corporate partners, or it can be some other institutions that may have another technology that might be even better with your technology within the portfolio. Whatever it is, just identify those targets and follow them. Prepare to initiate this contact, doing the business plans, and also putting everything in a due diligence package that makes sense to that audience. And after that, manage the process to get in contact with that person and give the information, and try to negotiate until the deal is executed. Something really interesting to notice here is that some negotiations can take too long to perform, and you as an innovator don't want to spend a lot of time negotiating in something that might not be eventually executed. And so in these terms, when executing a deal, try to put yourself some milestones and also a timeline that if not met, then you're gonna go away from that transaction and try to look for something more efficient. And with this, we have concluded with our licensing and alternate pathways module. If you want to know more about these topics, please go refer to our biodesign book in this course. My name is Luis Soengsen, and thank you so much for watching.